Max Verstappen never, and we mean never, expected to win in the first few races of 2025. He repeated this often enough during the winter break, after pre-season testing, and even during the first race weekends of the season. He remained extremely conservative. Even after the Japanese Grand Prix, which he managed to win in a spectacular and controlling manner, he doesn't expect miracles from Red Bull. But there is one difference. Against all expectations, that first victory is indeed on the scoreboard. Before we explain just how Verstappen managed to defeat McLaren, leave a like on this video if Verstappen's victory surprised you, and be sure to subscribe to the Racing News 365 channel. Now, let's get on with the video. Across all three practice sessions in Japan, Red Bull appeared quite consistent with Max Verstappen behind the wheel. The gap to the front was consistently around half a second, which gave little reason for hope heading into qualifying and the race. Verstappen's Friday remarks about not yet having confidence in the car certainly didn't contribute to any optimism, and he openly gave Red Bull homework once again. However, McLaren team boss Andrea Stella did indicate the Red Bull was running with more fuel and using lower engine modes, but only mentioned this after the race. Rather convenient timing. We know that Red Bull often manages to find improvements from Friday into Saturday, partly due to excellent simulator work in Milton Keynes, where track reality is mirrored against the virtual world. This wasn't particularly evident on Saturday morning, as the gap remained at 5 tenths to McLaren in third practice. But a few hours later in qualifying, the Austrian outfit managed to turn the deficit into a dead heat. A difference of 12 thousandths of a second can hardly be called an advantage, but in the fight for pole, it counts. A day later, it would prove to count double, as overtaking proved more difficult than having a snowball fight during a heatwave. The data shows, as has been the case throughout the season, that Verstappen was running with less downforce than his main rivals, beneficial on the straights, but a serious disadvantage in the corners. However, whilst a gifted driver can't compensate for anything on the straight, they can in the corners, and that's where Verstappen's brilliance came into play. He made the difference entirely by himself, as he literally stated after qualifying. Verstappen said, "We've constantly tried to improve the balance, which wasn't easy, but we made small improvements in every session. And in that final lap, I just went flat out. I was on the limit. Maybe even slightly over in some places, but that gives tremendous satisfaction on this circuit." Two things can be derived from Verstappen's words. Verstappen sought the limit, something you wouldn't trust anyone else to do to the same extent. Red Bull also contributed by continuously making small improvements. It's guesswork what these improvements were, but sometimes the smallest changes can suddenly make things click. And that's what happened. Verstappen reached a point where he might not have been able to handle the RB21 as he could with, for example, the RB19 from 2023, but he reached a point where he could confidently brush against the limit. Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko acknowledged this by stating that Max Verstappen essentially drove 53 qualifying laps on Sunday. That's the kind of statement that used to be made about Michael Schumacher in his prime. Speaking of the best, according to Verstappen, Red Bull had managed to get the car at its best on Sunday. For context, the best that can currently be extracted from the RB21 as a package, as Verstappen has also indicated that there's still plenty to improve on the car, and that one swallow doesn't make a summer. And with that car, Verstappen was able to keep both McLarens behind him. The lower wing settings could have helped him if McLaren had gotten within DRS range, but it never came to that. Verstappen created the decisive gap of more than a second at the start, and that was that. Afterwards, that margin fluctuated between 1.3 and 2.1 seconds. On paper and in practice, not enough to sit back and relax, but more than sufficient for the champion to control the race. What helped was that Verstappen's tyre management was excellent, even better than expected, Although Friday's long runs had already shown that whilst he might not necessarily be the fastest, he could maintain very consistent pace on any given compound. The lower temperatures on Sunday provided that additional support to not rely purely on tyre management against the Orange Brigade from Woking. Only once did Lando Norris from P2 see a real opportunity, which was immediately after his pit stop whilst exiting the pit lane. In the working lane, he came out right alongside Verstappen, who was in the fast lane having pitted on the same lap. Norris attempted to overtake Verstappen as they passed the pit exit, but ended up with all four wheels on the grass. It was a perfectly valid and legal attempt, hence no punishment from the FIA. Ultimately, Norris knew it was his only chance. Both drivers complained over the radio, but later joked about the incident and referred to it as Lando mowing the grass. Verstappen didn't even need to defend. Norris drove himself into his own trap. Verstappen could have made room, but as Norris himself said, Verstappen is the last person to do that. Verstappen was right to hold his line, just as Norris was right to try something, especially since McLaren once again made a mess of its strategy. The Papaya team played it safe on a day when something risky could have seen them be victorious. Stoic, perhaps the best word for Verstappen and Red Bull's victory. Strike on Saturday and then never really look back. It was reminiscent of recent times that are still only a year behind us. But Red Bull must be warned by Verstappen's words. One swallow doesn't make a summer. But how nice can a warm spring day be? What did you make of Verstappen's victory, but also McLaren's safe strategy? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the Racing News 365 channel. Be sure to join us this weekend for the Bahrain Grand Prix. See you later.